Well, Tim, I was over to see the McGregor fight with the Cowboy, and I'll tell you something, boy, that is a brutal sport. And the funny thing is that it was over so fast. We sat all through the prelims and everything. He didn't even muss his hair. He looked the same now. His hair wasn't mussed.
Nope, he looked the same walking in as he walked out.
God, and felt sorry for the Cowboy that he broke his nose. Believe it or not, this is if you didn't see the fight, he broke his nose with his shoulder, and he kept going up and zinging with his shoulder. I think he threw the Cowboy off. He never saw that before.
No, they said that's Joe Rogan and those guys that were doing the game or doing the fight. They said they've never seen that before.
Yeah, and it was pretty.
You know what I think happened though, Dad? He came out and threw a big haymaker and he jumped, and the Cowboy ducked, and McGregor's knee hit him, and I think he was a little bit stunned, and he grabbed him like to kind of get his bearings. And then McGregor popped him 3 times.
I think that the coup de grace, as they say, was the kick to the face. Okay, isn't that awful? Yeah. I don't like that sport. I don't.
Well, yeah, we were watching it, and then Dad goes, turn on the Vancouver-San Jose game. I don't like we'll just watch McGregor walk in. He says, I don't like watching that.
I don't. And, it's funny, that I used to do a lot of fighting a little bit when I played in that and the violent. How about the guy last night getting his teeth knocked out? Who was that? Got his teeth knocked out in the Chicago?
Stastny.
Stastny. Yeah,
he got his for Vegas. In the Montreal game, got his teeth knocked out in overtime.
Yeah, what gets me is down on the ice picking up his teeth. I think what used to get me. He could have shot on the glass. He could have shot up the middle. He could have passed the puck. He didn't aim it, but I used to remember a guy would be shooting it in, and I'd be standing up at the red line. And he'd hit me on the ankle. You got the whole ice to shoot it in. You have to hit me on the ankle. That was a pretty good game. Price played pretty good last night.
Well, how about Max at overtime? Domi.
If he had a score twice,
that would have been the goal of the year if he would have had.
Ding, zing! He beat those guys. I think he was a little mad. Anyhow, that was a good game. And
Cindy, you got a funny story with Max's. First game in the OHL, because you're good friends with his mom.
Oh yes, yeah, and Max and Dell, our producer here, they grew up together when they were young. They went to the same nursery school. They went to the same school, and they played their tyke hockey together and the whole deal. So anyway, this is Max's it's his first OHL game. So I go up, Dad, with Trevor. And who's the governor of the London Knights, who's in the London Knights. And so Leanne texts me, says, why don't you come down and sit with me? And she sits down low by the glass. I said, sure. And she says, okay, but you got to realize, Cindy, she says, if you sit with me, I sit amongst all older season ticket holders. And every time anyone scores, especially Max, they got a high five. And I'm not into high fiving. But anyway, we sat there and Max scored. We could not believe it. He got a hat trick, his first OHL game, got an assist. So you can imagine, I just felt like I was watching one of my own sons playing, because I'd seen him come up through the ranks and everything. So it was really exciting. And I even signed witnessed his contract.
Oh, I didn't know that.
With the London Knights, because all the paperwork.
The last fight we really saw in Minor Midget.
Yeah.
Tell about that. That was the last fight, and Max was involved in that.
Yeah, Max played on the Don Mills Flyers, and Darnell Nurse was his teammate, and they were playing their rivals, Toronto Marlies, and I can't remember who was on it, but Ritchie, the big guy from
Orangeville.
For Orangeville, he was playing. So, and I think, who's he playing now? He plays for Anaheim.
Yeah.
So,
and
back then, Nurse was well over 6 foot, and Ritchie was well over 6 foot. They were both big guys, and it was at the Vic Village Arena. It was one of the coldest rinks in the GTHL, and they were 15 years old. And Max was scrambling in front of the net, and he got knocked down, and they all kind of piled on. And Nurse came running in, and Ritchie there, and I think those two guys started to fight, and then everybody paired off. Excuse me. And Max and I don't remember the guy he was fighting got up, and they started fighting. And this wasn't like the 15-year-olds; they were really throwing them. Yeah. This was not
the last fight.
It was the last fight, so it's 10 years ago since we've seen a fight in Minor Midget. But the thing that scared me was that Max kind of grabbed a guy that was a little bit bigger, and they started throwing him. And again, they were both were really throwing him, and they drifted over towards in front of Don Mills's bench, and Ty was there. And I just thought, please, Lord, don't let this guy really cork Max in front of Ty. But no, Ty, you would give the nod to Max on that. But that was the last time, so 10 years ago, and they all got, I think they got 8 or 10 games. They got
8 games.
8 game suspension. But that was that's how hockey's changed. That was 10 years ago since we've seen them.
Well, look, if he had scored on one of those, they're Deacon and diving last night, and Price won his 20th game, which I thought was pretty good. And then Kovalchuk, how about Bergeron make a good move on that guy or what?
You knew when he was taking the shootout, you just knew he was going to score. You know, like he picked up the puck, you just knew he was going to score. And he didn't. He just froze Fleury. Fleury didn't even move, and he zinged it right between his legs. It was unbelievable.
It looks like he's really enjoying it there. He's back enjoying. He's like one of those guys in L.A. He wasn't enjoying himself. I think he had a lot of pressure on him, but it looks in Montreal they're treating him right, and he's happy. He's playing a lot, playing more than anybody.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They were talking on the radio the other day. They said now there'd be a lot of teams interested in him the way he's playing for the playoffs because he's making like $700,000. Would you trade him if you were Montreal?
Well, and if the understanding, I don't know how you do it, that he comes back, but I think he's happy. I think they're going to have to give him a lot more money next year. He's earning the money. And Kovalchuk, imagine, who'd ever thought when Bergeron made the deal, he said, well, we got nothing to lose, but he's coming through like a trooper.
Yep, so there was a lot on TV this weekend. Let's just say on the Saturday night, we were flicking back between the Leaf game and the Vancouver game and the Montreal game and then the McGregor fight.
And the funny thing is, we get to the McGregor fight, but the Montreal, we're talking about Montreal, they're winning 4-2. And I figured, at 4-2, it's all over. I switched back, it's 4-4. What the heck's going on? But I have to tell you, the highlight of the night was that McGregor fight, that's for sure.
Well, Dad, I have to ask you a question. First of all, I want to say, thank goodness for clickers. Remember in the old days when I was young and you would go when we were in Rochester, switch the channels? Remember in the old days you had to manually switch the channels. I always said that's what you had kids for, was to put it back to 8, put it back to thing. But what I want to ask you, you sort of alluded to it, was why, like a tough guy like you, and you like fighting and the whole thing, and you don't like to watch that type of boxing? Is that the same as this type
mixed martial arts?
What is your type of thinking there? I just don't get it.
I remember the story, reading the story about Dog, the bounty hunter. I think that's his name, and Beth, his wife. And Beth had bought him a very expensive front row seats to a championship fight. So he sat there and watched it for about a minute, and he says, I can't watch this. And she says, are you nuts? She says, I paid all this money. I'm staying. And he says, no, he says, I can't stand it. She says, well, you're leaving alone. She says, I'm staying here alone. So he went out and smoked cigarettes to make her mad. That was mad. So they asked him, why didn't you stay to see the fight? He says, I used to see that all the time in prison. He was in prison, I guess, for murder. And I see it on the street. And he says that's more like street fighting than real fighting, and that's why I don't. One of the reasons I don't like it, and everybody loves it, but I'm not putting it down. And it's a tough sport, but I just can't watch it.
Do you think a lot of the tough guys out there are like that, like Ty and Probert, and they just don't enjoy that?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but I know I don't enjoy it. But I have to admit, I really like to watch McGregor. I tell you the truth, I like to see him walking in and the way he walks. And it's the strangest thing that it's in America. They're always in America. And all he does is brag up Ireland. And he has and after it's over, he has the big flag around him. And everybody seems in the United States, as long as it's Ireland, they're all happy. They're all singing and everything like that. Don't ask me why, but he is a cocky guy. And like I said, his hair wasn't mussed. He going out, he looked the same as he's coming in.
So what else did you see this weekend?
Well, there was a lot of them. Like I said, I couldn't believe the 4-2, and then it's 4-4, and they go into overtime. Connor McDavid got his usual 2 goals last night. I mean, every game he plays, and they won 7-3. And the funny thing is, Arizona outshot them, but Smith, he comes through. I mean, he's from Kingston, Ontario. He does a great job.
You hate to say it, though, with Edmonton. If the goalies play well, they win.
Yeah, well,
if the goalies don't, they lose.
Well,
That's Toronto. You can say that, too, I guess.
Well,
right?
yeah. Well, Toronto last night, Toronto loses the game, and Anderson gets the Bronx cheer. I mean, I just can't believe that somebody would.
I kind of laughed a little bit, and I think if you were follow the Leafs way back in the day with Alan Bester, they started talking about how many goals were going through Anderson's 5-hole. And if you remember way back in the day, Alan Bester, they just harped on that to the point where he was getting paranoid. Every shot that went in.
Yeah, he was thinking about it. I hate to say Anderson, unless if he's his average, they lose. But imagine him getting the Bronx cheer. It's hard to believe. And Calgary played Ottawa last night. The shots were 15-3 in the first period. So for Calgary was unbelievable. And that Hogberg, he played. They get if Ottawa ever gets a good team going, and they get some free agency, they make some trades, they get some pretty good goaltending. And Vancouver, they won their. Let's say they won. How is it? They've won. I think they've won 11 out of 14, going pretty good. And Tanner Pearson got a couple of points, and they're pretty good. I have to admit that they're going to make the playoffs. It'd be pretty tough. Chicago, like I'm jumping around here, but Chicago, they're still 6 points out of the playoff spot, so it's going to be tough. But Vancouver gets there. They got a good goaltender. They get in the playoffs. It's going to be tough.
Hard to believe, though. Going into the playoff break, the Leafs are out of the playoffs, and the other teams ahead of them got a couple games on hand.
Yeah, well, I know they had that stretch there, and but they get in the playoffs, and Anderson gets hot. And I keep talking about Anderson, and I still think he's the best goaltender in the league.
Dad, I think the big news this week in the NHL was Zack Kassian got 2 games for, I guess you call it ragdolling Tkachuk. So
reminded me of the time Marchand grabbed one of the Sedins. Remember that? But the Sedins didn't do anything. He just did it just because he felt to do it. And this one was pretty good, I have to admit. And you've got a little tape here of Kassian talking about it, eh?
Yeah, so let's hear what Zack Kassian thinks about the whole thing.
Yeah, you got to respect the league's decision. That's basically what it comes down to.
Are you, you've had some time to reflect. Do you wish you did anything differently?
No, I'd do it again, all over again. It's there's no penalty call. I'm not crying about the hits. It's hockey. It's a game of hockey. It's rough. I thought they're a little bit on the blind side, but at the end of the day, I've laid big hits like that. I've been hit like that. But 2 times is more than enough. You play with fire, eventually you're going to get burned. And he messed with the wrong guy, and I don't think he realizes that we're in the same division and have a great memory. I told him since I've been in Minor Midget, I've stood up for myself and my teammates. People don't do that to me or my teammates when I'm out there. To me, those are 2 dangerous hits. If they're clean, they're still predatorial, which is completely fine. I'm a big boy. I love big boy hockey. But if you're going to play big boy hockey, you got to answer the bell every once in a while.
I have to say something about Kassian. I've liked him. He's having a great year. He's one of the highest pluses on a team that's fighting for his life for the playoffs. He's got no power play goals. He got 13 goals. He got no power play goals. That means he has to work for them all. And the sad thing about Tkachuk is he could be a great hockey player, not just a good hockey player. He could be a great hockey player, but he just can't go around and taking shots at guys. 3 times he hit him. They were shots like that, and he turns it, and he turns his behind and hits him with his behind. Looked like he was fixing on Kassian. And Kassian, like I say, he's no goon. Like you could say, oh well, a good hockey player like Tkachuk taken off by Kassian. They're even on goals, and one guy, I think he's a -10 or something like that on Calgary, and the other guy is a plus hockey player. You cannot go around. You have to stand up. Take the shots. You have to. When you run around and hit a guy like he does, and the league gives him 2 games. George Paris, that's not George Paris. I mean, he's a smarter guy than that. They give him 2 games. The referee was pretty good.
Yeah, he gave him 4 and a 10, and then a misconduct. But you think about it. I mean, really, the ref could have gave him 5-minute major.
And do you notice that no Calgary player came to Tkachuk? They know if you're going to run around, you have to stand up to the plate and take your step. He didn't even have his gloves off. Now they're going to play again. Yeah. There's no doubt that you're going to play again.
Well, they play Wednesday, January 29th, and then they play right after that, February 2nd. They play.
Now, you know what he's going to try to do? Tkachuk, he's taking a lot. I assume this is what he'll do. He'll try to get at Kassian, and the deal is, he'll be guys between them. You have to stand up, and I think that I don't think that really helped Calgary spirit at all. So when you see one of your best players being ragdoll and thrown around, and the other guy somehow or other, the other guy is a hero. And I always liked Kassian, but I like him a lot better now.
Yeah. Did you see what was going on in the kind of the war between the fans? That I think a Calgary radio station put a big billboard in Edmonton on with Tkachuk's face on it. So one of the Calgary guys, or one of the Edmonton fans, got mad and donated to the Calgary Flames charity called Brown Bag, and I guess it's to give food for kids to they don't have a lunch at school. Yeah. And then he put, "This is in the name of Zack Kassian, and hope this feeds some young people in Calgary so they can grow up and be tough, not like Tkachuk." I think they raised $25,000.
Yeah. And I hate to say the name the players are calling him now is Tkachuk. They're calling him the Turtle.
The Turtle. Yeah.
So, Dad, why would they give a guy like Kassian 2 games?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it comes from the rule I hate the worst than any rule at all. I think in any sport is the instigator rule. And what happens is it was put in by the owners a long time ago, long time ago, that they actually thought, believe it or not, that the tough guys in the league would pick on the stars, and that's why they put in the instigator rule. Like just as Bernstrom, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he elbowed Rask. Now Rask has got a concussion, he's out and the whole deal. And now just say Chera had jumped in and grabbed that guy when he did it. Chera would have got 2 minutes, 5-minute major, and a 10-minute misconduct. So he would have been out like that. And if he gets too many of these, he gets games after that. So this was put in, the instigator rule was put in. That's why Kassian got 2 games. And George Paris, like I said, I'm sure that he wasn't the guy that did it because he knows what's going on. But he got 2 games like that. But the instigator rule was put in by the owners. The nearest they were ever to the ice was in their drinks. I say that all the time. It's so true. And that's why. And the referee was really good. He gave him a 4-minute and a 10-minute and something like that. He actually should have had, But that's why the instigator rule is one of the worst rules that ever put in hockey. You're going to say, well, why don't they take it out? Well, they can't take it out because if they ever took it out, there with the media, I can hear Sarah. Well, there they are advocating violence, taking out the instigator rule. So you can't win. It's in there, and there's nothing you can do about it. And all I think about is Semenko and McSorley. They must laugh when they think about it because they were there for one reason and one reason only: protect Gretzky.
So, Dad, the other big story, there's a lot of stuff going on in the NHL this past week, was the shocking news that Gerard Gallant, the coach of Las Vegas Knights, was fired. That
is one right out of the blue. The other one, I like to love the story that I tell all the time. For 5 years in Boston, or for 4 years in Boston, I got a bag that said coach of the Boston Bruins, Don Cherry, and the last year it had coach, so I knew I was on the end. So I'll talk about that later. But that's not George McPhee, the general manager. That's the owners. I mean, there's no way that you'd ever give a guy. I mean, this guy, I said on TV that this is the most successful expansion team ever. And like that, his record this year was unbelievable. 3 points out of first spot. He was in the playoffs. 6 games over 500. He was on the road to about 93 points. Unbelievable. If you asked anybody in hockey, they were shocked.
Well, I think when you saw the players being interviewed, most of the time after the coach is fired, it's kind of like, oh, well, but these guys look like they were in shock.
I mean, you're knocking on first spot, but that same thing happened to him. I remember seeing this was awful when in Florida he was doing good. The players loved him in Florida, And remember, he was fired, and he was standing outside with his assistant coach with some bags, and the players were on the bus looking out at him, and he was waiting for a cab to pick him up.
They had to take his bags off the bus.
Yeah. Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he take his bags off the bus. I mean, it's somebody making a decision that doesn't know hockey. But I tell you, boy, that was a shocker.
Yeah. He was 40 games. Well, you just think about it. He's been there, 2.5 years. The most successful franchise, not in just hockey, most successful franchise in sports to go to the finals. That never happened, I don't think, in any other sport. He was 40 games above 500 for his three there. And again, as you said, he was only a point out, 2 points out of first place, or a point out of first place.
Yeah, that wasn't George McPhee. That was the general man. He was the general manager. He didn't make that decision. But I remember after I left the Boston Bruins, they hired a coach called Freddie Creighton, good guy, and he was rolling along, and I remember the story goes that he went into Atlanta Flames before Calgary, and he had 93 points. I mean, I think there was only about 7 games to go. He was 4th overall in the league, and I couldn't believe it. He had 93 points, and the story goes, this is what happened. I don't know whether it's true or not, but this is what I was told by a few guys that on the Boston Bruins, that his son, he used to coach Atlanta, so his son had a young son, had an Atlanta sweater. So they had Boston Bruins had a morning skate, and naturally the kid comes out to skate, and he's got an Atlanta sweater on. Boy, oh boy. Doesn't sound like much, but when you're a hockey player, when you see your coach's son come out with the players you're going to play that night. So he got fired in 93 points. I couldn't believe it, Tim. It's the old story, Tim. And what is it? 18 guys in 2 years have been 18 coaches in the National Hockey League have been fired in the 2 years. And it's still little ways to go yet. That is unbelievable. I mean, it's the old story. You're hired to be fired if you're a coach.
Well, the one thing with Vegas, too, you should say, is Peter DeBoer. They got a good coach with Peter DeBoer. Well,
Peter DeBoer, a lot of people said that he was fired because they wanted Peter.
Yeah.
And because he's a pretty good smart. And, you know, I remember we were at the prospect game. By the way, they changed the name, eh?
Yeah.
We don't want to get into that one. I wonder why they changed the name. Yeah, boy. Anyhow, it used to be Cherry versus Orr, and now it's red against the white. Well, politically correct, eh? That's the way life is in the world. But anyhow, I remember he coached one, and we talked to him. He was a good guy. And he told a story when he used to coach Kitchener. They had no glass back of the bench, and when his power play wouldn't work.
Well, he said that there was a bunch of season seat holders that had been there for a year. So he said, they were like, they were the head of the booster and all that. So you couldn't say anything to him.
So he'd say, when the power play wouldn't work, well, I guess I can see Monday they're going to be working on the power play. And he said it just used to drive him nuts.
Yeah, and we go, oh, they scored on they gave up a goal on the penalty kill. I guess they're not practicing the penalty kill that much, are they? And he said you just sit there and stew. And he says you'd want to go down and yell at them, but he says you couldn't because they were. Well,
there was no glass back. That's changed now. They got glass.
Was that the rink that the Kitchener rink, is that the rink that you played with?
I played in that rink, and I hate to tell you all how many cities Rose and I went to and everything like that. But this was the greatest place we ever lived at any place of all the places we've lived. And it was unbelievable. It was bigger than the house I'm living in now. And I must tell you the story. Okay, this is what happens. Is when you're a minor leaguer, and not like they do now, they have it. You have to go, and you go to the office, and they say, has anybody put in for anybody to rent? And they give it this. And every one I went to, something would happen. We went to this one, and it was up 3, but it was a beautiful spot. It was up 3 stairs and everything, and up 3 floors, or whatever you call it. And the landlord was a Polish guy. And the guy says,
Well, you went with 2 guys.
Yeah, no, just one guy.
One guy. And didn't you say it was kind of like you took turns? So if this was your... So you took turns. So you say, okay, well, if I like this one, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, and this was my turn. So this was mine. if I wanted it. So we went up, and it was 3 floors, but it was beautiful once you get up there. And the guy said, I can hear him now, you're Polish, eh? And he's, yeah, he said, my wife's Polish, and she can, So I could see the handwriting on the wall. So he got that, and that was it. There was no other place. So I thought I'd give another try, and I go back to the office, and I said, is there any more? She says, well, there's one here left. And I said,
well, you said Mom called because Mom was.
No, I called her, and she said,
you weren't, because that was during training camp. So
No, she was at home. Yeah, she was home in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and she said, now let me get this right. Everybody else has a place to live, but you didn't get a place to live. And I tried to explain to her there was circumstances and everything, and she said, all right, but she was mad. I could tell. So anyhow, I went at the office, and I'm still trying again. He said, well, there's one here left over. You give it a try. And it was gorgeous, brand new. It was like a chalet, and it was 2 nurses living down below. You never even knew they were there, parking in the back. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was the best place we ever lived. And Rose always said the best place she ever, and we were in a lot of places, the place she liked the most was Kitchener, because there was a lot of Dutch living around there and the Germans living around there, and that's where she came from. Hershey, Pennsylvania, there was a lot of Dutch and that around there. I remember when the booster.
That's what Mom said. She said they had the best booster club. And they always had a big party after the game for the.
They had a
the
big
teams.
party, and I remember I went up there and they had pig's tails. Pig's tails. I couldn't believe it, and she thought they were great. But anyhow, that's why she liked it the best. I think we lived on Rex Drive or something like that. We had more fun, and I keep going on about this here, but it's a great story. So this guy that I went, he took the 3rd floor up and all that there, and it was a beautiful spot and everything like that. He come over to the house and he sat down and his wife looked around and she said, Rose, I have to tell you, this is the most gorgeous spot. And he's sitting there. I remember he had a great big DeSoto sitting out the front. They don't make those cars anymore, but he was sitting out the front. And she said, not like my husband. He makes us walk up 3 flights of stairs to get to the place like that. Oh, I just loved it. He was so mad he went out and sat in the car. Well, Tim, I guess Thursday we've got a great fight coming up. We're going to talk about Leapin' Lou Fondinato and Gordie Howe, what happened in their fight, if you remember that. And naturally, if you're going to talk about fights, we got to talk about the Pierre Bouchard, Stan Jonathan fight.
Yeah, because we talked about Stan last week, and everybody said, well, you talked everything about Stan, but you didn't mention his fight with Bouchard.
Yeah, well, I'll mention that one. That was probably the greatest fight. And you know, I'm going to, next week I should tell a fight. There's a code in hockey that you fight certain code that goes off in hockey about fighting. And this Thursday, I'll tell you about it.